Welcome back to the Baldwin Stories. My name is Oakley Dean Baldwin. I'm doing a series on former Sheriff Buford Pusser and his wife, Pauline Mullins Pusser. Today, we're going to talk about the 1972 arrest of Constable Buford Pusser and a little bit about his 1959 arrest before he was sheriff. Before I do that, I want to plug my new book. It is The Greatest Moonshiner of All Times, Percy Flowers. You can go to Amazon, type in my full name, Oakley Dean Baldwin, and this book will come up. It's a real thriller, so be sure to check it out. We're going to back to 1959 first. About a week after Buford Pusser married Pauline Mullins Vance, he wound up in McNairy County, Tennessee, with two of his friends. Now, they were living in Chicago, so that was a pretty good haul, that drive to come down to McNairy County. But he ended up at the nightclub owned by W.O. Heathcock. And he was there for 4 or 5 hours, the witnesses said. And at closing time, W.O. got beat up and assaulted and actually robbed. Buford was charged along with his two friends, and he was arrested for that and had a trial, and the jury found all three of the men not guilty. And but he was he was there. He perpetrated that crime with those other two men. Sometimes you have to have overwhelming evidence in a jury to convict somebody, and sometimes you have to have, as we can see from current events, you don't need much evidence to convict somebody. So we have a 1959 arrest of Buford Pusser, and 3 years later he moves from Chicago down to McNairy County and becomes a law enforcement officer. Okay, so basically this video is about the 1972 arrest of Constable Buford Pusser. As you know, after 3 terms, he left office in 1970, and he became constable of the 3rd District in McNairy County. And they have powers of arrest, but not, they normally don't go out and patrol and look for crimes. They normally assist the sheriff's department or serve papers and that type of things. It's not the same as being a sheriff or a sheriff's deputy. This was December 31st, New Year's Eve of 71, when Constable Buford Pusser was attending a party. The witnesses state that he was not drinking alcohol that night, but left around midnight. There was a Mr. Thomas Pickens, and he was driving a green Volkswagen, had 3 of his friends with him, and these friends had been partying since earlier that night. Around 10 o'clock that night, 2 Hardin County deputy sheriffs saw him intoxicated and told him not to drive home then. But obviously he waited till they left and continued bar hopping, going from club to club. Well, at 4 o'clock in the morning, they wound up at the Old Hickory Grill in McNairy County, just a handful of miles from the border. What happened next was at 4 o'clock, they were closing the Old Hickory Grill, and there was some type of disagreement over purchasing a 6-pack of beer, and the 4 men left the club. One of them actually urinated on the front door, and then Mr. Pickens went to his car and grabbed a shotgun and put off a few rounds up into the air. They got in their car, and as they were leaving, they noticed a dark-colored car in the parking lot, and they approached it, and this car happened to have Constable Buford Pusser in the car. And there was an exchange of words, something to the effect of, "Do you want some of this?" And Pusser told him no, and they told him, "Well, you can have some of it." And there was some words exchanged again, and Buford Pusser left the parking lot and the Volkswagen pulled out behind him, and he turned left on 45 highway and went a ways and made another left, and they kept following him. He pulled over on the side of the road, and he thought they were going to pass him, and they did pass him, but when they did, they pulled off in front of him and then approached him in his car again, and there was a confrontation. He had to take the shotgun away from him, and he struck Mr. Pickens above the ear, causing an abrasion, and basically after that he let him go. Well, on January the 4th, Mr. Pickens went to Memphis FBI office and filed a civil rights violation against Constable Buford Pusser, and they took out warrants on him, and he was actually arrested and had to post a $1,000 bond. During the investigation, since the FBI was involved, they took witness statements from 3 or 4 of Buford Pusser witnesses who stated pretty much that's how the story went. And of course they took the witness statements from the 4 men in the vehicle, and they told the story a different way. They told it that yes, they did have a conversation in the parking lot with Buford Pusser, but they thought he was broke down and offered assistance to him, and they pulled out first, and then Buford Pusser pulled out behind them and drove down the road about 5 miles and pulled a blue light on him and stopped him. And then they had the confrontation over the shotgun where he did strike him, and he actually slapped another man to the ground, and then he confiscated the shotgun and then let those 4 men leave and did not arrest either of the 4 men. So we have 2 totally different stories. What happened after that was that morning Mr. Pickens attended looking for assistance on the cut of the gash over his ear. He stopped by the hospital and had around 7 stitches put in his ear. And during that visit, he told the staff and the nurses that he was on a hunting trip, and he had passed a car on the side of the road that was broken down and offered assistance. And that was Constable Pusser, and he ended up getting assaulted. So, you know, a lot of times these stories don't match, but when Mr. Pickens telling 2 different stories, the FBI, I'm sure, looked at it as tie goes to the runner. There was, I was unable to find a deposition in this case, so I'm assuming that it was just thrown out at this point. But there you go. Buford Pusser was arrested in 1959 for assault and robbery, and he was away from his home during that period of time, all 3 men, and different witnesses told different stories. There was 4 or 5 people told the same story that W.O. Hathcock told during the assault, but then Buford Pusser had 3 or 4 witnesses stating that he couldn't have done it, and he went no farther than the state line in Chicago there. But be sure to subscribe and like this video. Leave comments for me if you have any questions. We're all patiently waiting for the autopsy results from February to April, when Pauline was exhumed and the TBI did an autopsy on her body. So more later. Y'all have a great day, and thanks for watching.